Alrighty, let's just jump into it as is. This is one of those times when if it can go wrong, it will go wrong, and everything pretty much has decided to go wrong. So fortunately, I've been able to I guess salvage most of what's going on here. I guess salvage most of. Make sure my sound is coming through nice and clear. Yep, it's working. Cool. All right, so yeah, it's been a funny 24 hours. The one-man show is back. I am going on live progressively earlier, just to sort of get the right sort of balance in terms of what I can afford to do when it comes to my lifestyle. And yeah. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to combine two different drawings into blending more into one. So I'm just going to take the head from this character here, which I've actually already drawn, so I'll just swap it out. Because I wasn't like 100% satisfied with the previous one. So if you're alive and kicking out there on a Saturday night and you're like me, and you just want to tune in and watch me sort of draw and sort of talk to myself and muse about different things. Apparently, there is a Jurassic Park kind of expo thing on. It looks pretty cool. That I would definitely like to go see. It's unusual for me to just sort of pay general admission to and just go to something. But I realize that life is honestly more about experiences, not just things, not just like what we can produce and consume. It's being able to produce and consume these things with like other people that makes them more important and special. Yeah, it's been one of those unusually muggy, borderline unpleasant summers in Australia. Like, I will 100% take the heat over the cold. Like, but there's this prevailing idea that, you know, these things can be controlled. So I'll fix up the colouring here. A lot of the time, you don't need to really recolor anything. You can just more or less use liquify and push most of the colors where they need to go. Like, it's obviously it's not 100% like perfect method, but it does help. Actually, I will match up that hair. Wasn't happy with the hair on this one originally. with lots of new birthdays to remember. Turn down that music ever so slightly. I'm gonna swap out this head. It's a bit too simplistic. Replace it with this one. It's a bit more metal, a bit crazier looking. And obviously we'll fix up this made a bit of a hash of this colour layer for his face. Clean this up and get it looking a bit more schmick. Make sure everything's plugged in and charging. So one of the main reasons why I bailed out of the stream last time is this overhead camera only had 20% battery power left, and I just realized you know, you got to keep these things sort of plugged in. the cool thing about this particular job, just in general, is just how breezy it becomes when it gets to the colouring stage. Like, these are honestly, and I've mentioned this before, but you know, any job where you can like hone and use skills that you started figuring out when you were in kindergarten, is always worth considering as quite possibly the best job. That's one of the reasons why I've been doing this, and will most likely keep doing this for as long as I can. Because compared with every other like job I've ever done, still orders of magnitude the most rewarding. Also, like I mentioned in the last stream, Patreon exclusives will be showing up during this month and more going forward. And I have a few other announcements coming up that they will be featured more on my blog. Oh, come on. The only issue with these older model iPads is they're still every bit as good, but their level of sensitivity when it comes to commands does start to decline after a while. I'm actually planning to have a new one, hopefully pretty soon. Haven't decided when I'll get it, but like, I'm pretty happy with the technology where it is at the moment. You can always benefit from having a bit more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge these two layers together to just avoid confusion. Do a bit more of this line cleaning up. Straighten up my chair a little bit. Yeah, that's a bit closer to what I want. So just a heads up. I just need to go on a quick break. I will be right back. All right. So where was I? So essentially what I want to do is, I guess, re-establish that sweet spot. Where I more or less know when something's working. It's kind of been a running gag. Just have to turn off a fan. I'll be in a minute. Turn up that music. Just a tiny bit. So what is new in the world? Well, apparently the Tasmanian-born Princess Mary is going to become Queen of Denmark. Which is honestly pretty cool. Like, if there's anyone who knows, or at least has completely figured out how to be like a royal, it's her. I mean, the way they met seriously sounds like a Disney movie. I think it was the Princess Diaries or something. Because I mean, quite literally a prince in disguise. Like, she has almost nothing to do with Australia these days, as, you know, her royal duties. Whatever those are, pretty much take up all of her time. Like, they've got kids and everything like that as well. Which also has to be, like, in its own right, kind of awkward. Especially now, considering that, like, most royals don't dress as stereotypical royals anymore. In fact, they haven't for like a long time. Like, even like Saudi princes and stuff, they're still technically wearing like high fashion, but still very much like streetwear. And it kind of both helps and sort of hinders the whole idea of a royal family to begin with. I mean, it helps in the fact that, like, the Crown Prince of Denmark was able to hide in plain sight as just a regular backpacker from Europe. So much so that he was like just easily able to, you know, hit on some random Aussie girl who decided to come over to the mainland from the Apple Isle, and, you know, a couple of drinks in, he reveals that he is indeed in line to the throne of a country that honestly most people didn't realize actually had a royal family to begin with. Because let's face it, if you live or grew up in the West, the only royal family you've really ever heard of or been exposed to on the media in any way, shape or form has been the Windsors. Like, it's amazing just how much we know about, like, Harry and Meghan. And I've mentioned this before, but, like, there's nothing that they can do which is in any way going to be so catastrophically, like, world ending, that it won't just be seen as a tabloid distraction for people who, for some whatever reason, still haven't discovered the internet and rely exclusively on, you know, trashy magazines that find their way into like doctors' waiting rooms to keep themselves entertained. It's like, realistically, the only thing Harry can do that would be even vaguely approaching controversial is to do something about his rapidly thinning hair. And Megan, you know, she's just the princess's, well, not, she's not the princess, she's the former, well, he's technically still a prince. But, you know, in a matter of like days, he went from something like 8th in line to the throne to, in case of emergency, break glass. It's honestly pretty sad because it parallels what happened with his uncle. Well, his great uncle. Like, throne abdication is a big deal. I mean, at least it was sort of back in the 20th century. The problem is, the less mystique a royal family has, it's kind of like, you know, with, what are they called? Like celebrities and stuff. Like, I think the more we know about celebrities, the more they just seem like just regular people. Like when Will Smith, for instance, lost it. And the thing is, like, he hasn't gone anywhere. He's still spending most of his time just kind of moping and, you know, living in one of his gigantic mansions, just keeping to himself. Because essentially he is doing a prison sentence. Like, he may not have been like formally, you know, charged with anything because Chris Rock didn't like press any charges. But you know, a decade-long suspension from showing up at the Oscars, that'll do it. That is his prison sentence, whether anyone wants to admit it or not. And there's a good chance he will serve that. And, you know, by the time everything has like long since simmered down and people have moved on and forgotten about it, and the Smiths family will have by then largely vanished. Because that's kind of what Will was trying to build. Like, he was trying to sort of make this sort of famous person dynasty with Jada. Like, he wanted this, you know, two famous people having famous children kind of deal. But it didn't work because that stuff really doesn't work. Like, if anyone remembers the reality show The Osbournes, wherein Ozzy Osbourne was kind of allowed to get as drunk as possible and a camera crew sort of followed him and his family around. Like, Kelly and Sharon Osbourne are doing all right, but, you know, Jack lives a fairly private life. And that's the interesting thing about, like, celebrities that just kind of go, well, look, I'm financially stable. I made all my money in my, like, teens and 20s. I'm just gonna live off the money I made and retire early. And there is something like truly admirable about that. Like, you don't have to work forever. Like, a great example of that is, you know, what's his name? Frankie Muniz from Malcolm in the Middle. That guy just quit. And now he just does his own thing. Like, he went out on top. He realized that, you know, there wasn't really much more that he could do. I think it was in that movie Agent Cody Banks or whatever. I never saw any of those sort of movies, but I do remember seeing the ads for it. Like, this prevailing idea that celebrities are somehow, like, just stupid is also, you know, honestly not true either. Like, personally, I think Britney Spears is one of the most intelligent people and most underestimated people in the music industry. Like, when she said, I mean, I might be a little bit crazy, but there's no way I'm going back into the music industry. And everyone, like, you know, from the Free Britney movement was just freaking out, like, thinking, oh, she's gonna stage this, like, comeback or whatever. And it's just like, she's like, nope, that's not happening. Like, there's something truly admirable about that. And again, it just boils down to the fact that, yes, at her age... What just happened? Oh, I just got an email. Yeah, she's financially stable enough to, you know, weather whatever storm is coming at her. You know, she's been treated rather poorly. And the other thing people, I think, forget about celebrities as well is while they are exceptionally good at hiding the fact that they are indeed just regular people, it doesn't stop them from being regular people. And that mystique is just increasingly more difficult to maintain. Like the last of, you know, the great sort of Hollywood movie stars. Like I think the average age is, you know, late 60s, early 70s at this point. Oh man. Gotta be so careful with this iPad. Like so many of, you know, the celebrities that I watched as a kid, you know, they're getting old. Like, you know, Michael J. Fox, he's still clinging on. God bless him. Like he's sort of gotten to the point where he's so good at living with Parkinson's disease. It's just incredible. And again, like, that's kind of why actors are paid as much as they are. Because, you know, if you can live comfortably for the rest of your life off being in one movie, and obviously Michael J. Fox was in several, including TV series and other stuff. Being able to afford the best of the best when it comes to your medical needs is also another thing, you know, worth considering. Okay, I cannot stress that enough, that like if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. I saw the viral clips from the latest Golden Globes. Thought those were interesting. Like that Joe Coy guy. Like, I've never done like proper stand-up comedy before. I have done like open mics and stuff, and I've done like what are they called? Like karaoke, and I'm obviously I'm fairly comfortable in front of the camera and everything, but yeah, it's apparently he only had like 10 days to prepare, and you know he must have been sort of given a series of emails by his agent and his manager and the organisers of the Golden Globes just to say, look, you know, he's free to say certain things about certain people. My phone keeps buzzing. So let's throw in a bit of a background on this guy. Let's see what bits we've missed. So yeah, poor old Joe Coy, he gets called up, essentially draws the shortest straw when it comes to hosting the Golden Globes. And like, no matter what he does, like, obviously turning down the job, that's like he's not big enough, obviously, to, you know, just say, yeah, nah, not doing it. Because, you know, wherever he was on the call list or the email list or whatever, you know he wasn't their first pick. And the thing is, you know, for a comedian, hosting an award show has to be one of the most, like, difficult things. Like, you either roast the audience like Ricky Gervais did with essentially he brought a flamethrower to a cocktail party. Or you did what poor Chris Rock did and you know how to go at the right person at the right time. You know, whatever the case may be, it's just how interesting things sort of develop in that regard. So like at this point, awards ceremonies are just becoming increasingly more like, you know, ugly, hostile places for like creative people to express themselves. So it kind of stands to reason. Why Joe Coy must have been just straight up terrified of the prospect of performing live in front of all of those people. Like, I mean, performing live is actually not that difficult once you, you know, get past sort of stage fright or whatever. Because that's the interesting thing, like, stage fright is not a permanent state of mind. Like, after a while, you do mentally get over that. And stage fright is, and it's like, it's interesting in that there's so much adrenaline involved in sort of taking that plunge that you feel a level of exhilaration afterwards, and it does become addicting. It's one of the main reasons why a lot of people who aren't necessarily talented enough to make it as like musicians or actors or whatever go into politics, because it does have that like performative quality to it. It's very similar. Like, there's a lot of theatrics involved in politics. That's why they call, you know, that's why they call it like Hollywood for ugly people, or Bollywood for ugly people. And yes, I know I'm one to talk, but whatever. Also, if you are just having a bit of a lurk in the chat, if you could let me know if my audio is okay, because I've been talking for a bit over an hour now, and I am not entirely convinced that my mic has been on this entire time. Okay, so let's work on this background a little bit. And we'll go back and finish up the buildings and the smoke. Just very quickly blocking this in. Giant ape rampage. Simple drag and drop. Yeah, so where was I? Oh yeah, with Joe Coy and he actually flubbed that joke about Taylor Swift essentially being the person in the VIP section of the football game. Doing like a reaction and everything. And it struck me as weird. Like, if there's one person I'm pretty certain who would probably not be paying full attention to everything that goes on in a game of professional gridiron, it's probably Taylor Swift. I know less about that game than she probably does. And I find it way more fascinating. And I think a lot of the, at least the Aussies I know are with it. Like, there's something fascinating. I always found like American sports more fascinating than the sports I grew up with. Like, for instance, baseball. I always found baseball more interesting than cricket because, at least with baseball, the rules are easy enough for like a kid to follow. But with cricket, which was essentially the game that I was predominantly like exposed to, along with like, Aussie rules football and to a lesser extent soccer. Like, I was never really a sporty kid to begin with. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm pretty competitive, but like, I just find most run around after a ball type sports just feel like a waste of time. Which is why I've kind of mellowed when it comes to things like esports. I think esports are they're also kind of silly, but there's something about like the quickness and the hand-eye coordination and particularly the teamwork about you put certain first-person shooters that I find just really compelling. Not enough to like, pay to watch, but I'll certainly, be like, I love playing this kind of stuff. I also like sort of, knowing that my friends are also out there. Playing in alongside me. But even if they aren't or they can't make it, I'm very happy with the fact that I can just jump into like a quick match on my own. There's something very satisfying about that. Obviously, I am talking about Overwatch. Which is a huge deviation away from Joe Coy, but I'm getting back to him, don't worry. So Joe Coy says this sort of very safe, non-threatening milquetoast style joke. And the thing is, like, you could tell, just through the flop sweat and the fact that, his bleached porcelain veneer teeth were a little too bright and shiny. That it was a extraordinarily stressful gig for him. And like, I've done some stressful gigs, but it's mostly because the music's up too loud. And obviously I'm not talking about like Yeah, so I've had some pretty ordinary gigs myself. Oh, hang on. Oh, I realise I've been sitting for a little too long. I actually need to have a stretch. Oh, so I went to the gym and did my workout last night, and that was always it's always a bit of soreness afterwards, which is completely normal. Excuse me. I shall be right back. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. So this is don't worry, you didn't miss anything. But yeah, I was just saying that I was having a bit of a coughing fit because of the hay fever. Unfortunately, summertime here is a fair bit drier than I was expecting it to be. How are you today, Bon Amy? Or tonight, rather. So as I was rambling on about before, like the Golden Globes and things like what they called the Oscars or the what's the other one, the Grammys. They're all pretty much the same. Oh, good. What do you do? Yeah, I'm looking forward to my first gig of the year as well. Oh, cool. Yeah, I'm a caricaturist myself, so like you paint faces and I draw faces. Basically the same thing, only I tend to use like paper rather than skin. That's fantastic. Like, do you have a link to your stuff? Because I've worked with face painters plenty of times in the past. Like, I'm based out in Sydney though. Like, I think I remember you telling me you're in Queensland. If I remember correctly. I do occasionally get requests to draw people in cosplay, and they usually have their faces painted. Which is, sometimes they request that as well, which is pretty cool. And face paint's just kind of like a more advanced version of makeup when you think about it. I used to love, like when I was a kid, I used to love getting like zombie face paint or vampire face paint. thing about that though is, you know, the face paint I used to get when I was a kid, it'd usually start to dry and crack. Oh, cool. Yeah. Yeah, I work predominantly in like the metro area of Sydney and stuff, so I don't really do a lot of regional towns. Although I did perform live at a wedding a few years ago in Dubbo, and that was fun. But if you know anything about like the geography of New South Wales and like Australia in general, it's a minimum 5 hour drive from where I live. So the groom, who was extraordinarily grateful to have been able to find someone to accept the gig, he actually was able to accommodate me, which I was very, very grateful for, because like it is a marathon of a trip, which I kind of enjoyed. Like, so long as you keep your phone charged and you've like downloaded a fair amount of like entertainment, you know, things like you've got audiobooks, or if you've just got like, you know, music playlist or some kind of podcast. So long as you've got those sort of either downloaded or like recorded somewhere, you're usually fine. I actually forgot that when I was flying interstate, because like sometimes you forget just how much you take Wi-Fi for granted until you're on like a long haul flight and you realize, oh, I've only got one audio book which I've listened to on repeat several times, and it just starts getting long on the tooth. I did, yeah. I did another gig as a last minute fill-in for another artist who couldn't make it to a live gig in Townsville, of all places. Like, the only time I'd been to Townsville before then was in like 1995. So it was a long time since I'd been there. And yeah, it was cool. Like I was like that part of the world does not change very much from one year to the next. So I found it very easy to get around. It's not very big. The weather's like beautiful year round. People are super laid back. It's chilled out, and you know there's really not much going on there. So you know, although when I did arrive, I was probably a little bit overdressed, which you know. But the guy who booked me, he'd basically busted his drawing hand, and I ended up saying, "Okay, fine, I'll fill in for you, buddy." And yeah, he ended up paying for the flight, the accommodation, and yeah, me to just show up and draw for like 3 hours at a party, and I had an absolute blast. Great group of people too. Salt of the earth. Super fun. rowdy as, all that good stuff. And yeah, the money was fantastic too. Yeah, I started drawing caricatures kind of as a, you know, just as a sort of a whatever kind of thing. I never expected for it to turn into a full-blown career, but it just sort of happened. Like I did one Christmas party back in 2004, and you know, as of December of this year, that will be officially 20 years ago, which is kind of sobering now that I think about it. Do you have to drive particularly far when you go to gigs yourself, or do you get like Ubers, or like how does it work for you? Like me personally, like if I can't drive to a place, I honestly prefer getting a taxi. I'm very old school when it comes to that kind of thing. Gotta fill out these. Gotta fill out these. Yeah, like I find taxis just a little bit more easier to navigate. I think it's just because I'm used to them. Like I like taxis and I like hotels. I don't like. I'm not as, you know, crazy about things like ride shares and, you know, just using an app to crash at somebody's house. I got mates for that kind of thing. Oh, absolutely. I drew all the time growing up. Like I was never very much of a sport kid. I was never much of a gamer kid either. Although growing up, I did make it my business to find, you know, as a kid, there was always that one kid that you knew in school who had the parents who were going through a divorce, and they were the ones that had like the coolest toys for Christmas, and inevitably that kid would be the one kid that had the NES. So yeah, the 80s were actually really amazing for that kind of thing. Because like TV was much more ubiquitous back then than it is now. And seeing ads for like Nintendo and Mario and all that kind of stuff. That was huge. They even made like a live action Mario Brothers movie. And it was probably the first time as a kid that I was truly and honestly let down by a movie. And yeah, now I've lived long enough to see that come full circle, and the Mario movie that we have now is fully animated and the characters look like they do in the game. And Disney's doing like live action remakes of the stuff that they were originally supposed to be like animated. It's a weird kind of parallel universe that we've slipped into at the moment. Oh, that's good. Yeah. Like I think, you know, just as long as it's like not a crazy long drive, it'll usually be fine for you. yeah, long drives, they just, especially now with petrol prices, you can't be too careful. Like I remember during the pandemic, dang it. Oh, 100% digital. I mean, I can draw both. Like, I got my I got my start just drawing. What are they called? Just on paper. Like, I had a fairly low tech childhood. Didn't really have a home computer until later on, and I definitely grew up without a video game console. Like I mentioned earlier, it was always like, you know, finding the kid in your class that had the copy of Duck Hunt or Metroid or whatever. And I gotta say, Duck Hunt is one of the most amazing games. That was absolutely mind blowing back then. Because you had this, like, you know, plastic toy gun that you could literally shoot at the screen, and like these ducks would just fall out of the sky, and if you missed, the dog would laugh at you. So, like, you know, growing up fairly sheltered, seeing that, you know, that was like seeing a magic trick. You know, up until then, your TV would only really get about maybe 4 channels, 5 if you had decent reception. Like the early 80s was very much like it's been depicted in the show Stranger Things. Like, there was very little going on back then, particularly in Australia. Oh, watercolors are fun. I'm a big fan of. The only problem I have with watercolors is obviously you have to afford them. Like, you can get cheap watercolors, or you can just, like, you know, just buy some acrylic paints and, you know, water them down. But you don't get the same effects with cheap watercolors. So I went out because I was asked to do a watercolor job a couple of years ago as a commission, and I remember going to my local art supply store, and I normally never buy my stuff from art supply stores. Like, if you can order it online, or if you can order it, or if you can find it at, like, say, an Officeworks or even a Kmart, that's way better. But I ended up buying some premium watercolor, like, blocks, and I never got around to using them because the person ended up changing their mind. So I've still got them, and I'm still looking for a chance to, actually use them. And that opportunity may present itself, soonish. You never know. He kind of looks a bit like Hey Arnold. Oh, 100%. Like, the thing about watercolors as well is, like, if you get like high quality ones, if you pay the extra, they can last for years because you only use like a tiny amount. It's kind of like, say for instance, you're buying particular face paint makeups like grease paint. If you want to do like, something really cool or really like effects wise, if you want to make like a really like solid looking zombie like tutorial or whatever, like that's basically tax deductible. It's the same thing, like all the tech setup, or like the overhead cameras, the iPads, all these things. Like it's all part of a business. If you treat it like a business, and if you obviously register as a business. I mean, there's a lot of time you spend in the trenches, just sort of figuring out how to do stuff, getting good enough at it. Because I mean, they say like, oh, oh, it's finally raining. Yeah, like I haven't bought face paint in a very long time. There's a very cool like effects costume shop that I went to several years ago, and I bought some of that because I wanted to do like some proper cosplay makeup. And just sort of 3 base colors. It's over $100. So I just went with I just thought, okay. And I still have them, and they're still like, perfectly serviceable. But I don't see myself using them anytime soon, unfortunately. See, realistically, the only cosplay that I can do is probably Agent 47 from the Hitman series, but yeah. He requires very little makeup. In fact, the only thing I can see myself like needing is to like draw like a barcode on the back of my head, and that's it. Well, I have a sneaking suspicion I may need some help for that. and everything else with his particular look is just being stern and wearing a black suit with a red tie. Interesting. I love that game because visually it's just so striking and beautiful, and just the attention to detail that's gone into like pretty much all of that game. You almost forget what the point of the game actually is. You know, because you're just looking out over these amazing vistas of just rolling hills, or, you know, beaches with water and waves gently lapping against the shore, and you just think, yeah, do I really have to use a sniper rifle here? Because it's so nice. It's like honestly going on these little mini holiday adventures. Are you a bit of a gamer yourself? Oh, absolutely, yeah. Do you do like tutorials, like makeup tutorials? Like I've seen some of those. That's pretty cool. Ah, the rain's finally here. Just have to bear with me for 1 minute. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I never actually got too into the Zelda games. Like, you know, as I was mentioning before, with the whole, um, you know, that one person that you always knew growing up with the NES. Um, he had Mario, obviously, Punch Out, Duck Hunt, a couple of other guys. I think he had Tetris as well. Like, I think everybody had Tetris. But yeah, I can't remember if he had Zelda or not. But yeah, I just never got into Zelda. Which is a shame because it does look like a very cool game. Kind of have to sorry, kind of have to delete some of these layers as I go. Yeah, no worries. Good talking to you, and I'll see you next time. Yeah, that means the rain's here, so. If there's one thing I can absolutely say unequivocally about the weather here in Sydney is it doesn't stay like this kind of level of just awful hot for very long. Like the rain does absolutely just fix everything. So that means I can turn off the air conditioner, which is absolutely fantastic. So bear with me for one more minute. So, I apologise for all the delays. Okay. So yeah, it just started raining, so everything is finally cooled down, and I've been able to yeah, turn off the air conditioning for the first time in the whole day, and not gonna lie, it feels pretty amazing to have sort of more of a balance and equilibrium when it comes to how bloody hot it's been. So yeah, this is another part of the Dragon Ball Z parody cartoon that I've been working on. Which parts of this, obviously, I won't be doing like a full like live stream for. This is more of a, I guess more of a, like a sample, I guess. Like a behind the scenes look at the production. Because basically everything I do on my live stream is sort of work related. Although the sketch jam, it originally sort of began as just sort of me just kind of figuring out ideas of what to draw. And initially, the whole like sort of, I guess, chat interactivity was I would start like just drawing stuff, and then I'd kind of sort of throw it open and see what suggestions there were. But I think that might have been a little bit too ambitious, considering like just how I think just my audience just wants me to just draw what I prefer to draw and not to have too much interaction. Which I guess is, you know, totally fine. I think going forward though, I will like properly implement like a suggestion box when I'm doing like a full-on actual sketch jam. I just call these sketch jam because at the moment it's more of a placeholder name until I can come up with something a little bit better, a little bit more descriptive to what this actually is. This is like a squash and stretch animation technique that I always love the look of. Like a lot of animation, particularly the stuff that was, you know, cooked up in the 50s, is still very much the standard today. So yeah, it definitely looks like it's going to be a bit more cooler down tomorrow, which I'm pretty happy about. One of the things about, you know, living and working in like a naturally sort of hot country like Australia is the heat does absolutely like tire you out. Like sort of when it gets around to like, you know, sort of the middle of the day, sort of 2 p.m. It's just, yeah, crazy hot. Like obviously it's different in other regions of the country where it's just like hot year round. Like far north Queensland. That place is just, you know, tropical. I love it though. Like as a holiday destination, it's amazing. Oh, what have we got going on here? Oh man. Looks like everyone's back playing Overwatch again. So what's coming up this month? Well, the first wildcard stream, as I'm going live on Tuesday, which if you are watching me in the United States or in like parts of Europe, that'll be on a Monday, because obviously there are massive time differences between there and Australia. One moment, please. So yeah, this has been surprisingly productive compared to, I guess, some of my other streams. I think after taking, I guess, some of the advice and suggestions on board, I think yeah, sort of extending it out to a proper, you know, 2-hour thing has proved to be the magic. I'll tune down the opacity on that layer a little bit. That's better. Tomorrow's going to be a little bit nicer, although it might be considerably more muggy. Never tell. Actually, I'll have him punching his brains out. That's funny. That's one of the keys to like making cartoons funny. Yeah, so this has been an above average fruitful session. I'm pretty happy with how that's all turned out. I'm not happy with those fingers. happy with these fingers. I'm not happy with these fingers either. A bit wonky. Might come back to those a little bit later. Can't all be gems. So I will be, hang on, right back in due course. Please stand by yet again. Okay. Oh. What time is it? So we got not long before I'll wrap this one up for the evening. Playing around with like the best opportunities to go live. Should I give him blue hair? Yeah, might as well. Blue's a very powerful contrasting color. So yeah, what was I talking about before? Oh, that's right. Taylor Swift's sort of reaction to Joe Coy's kind of clunker of a joke that featured her as the punchline. Like, the camera literally just cut to her mid-sip, and, you know, she was just drinking wine and minding her own business, and all of a sudden it's like, uh-oh, Taylor Swift didn't appreciate that one. It's like, well, yeah, maybe she was just, you know, realizing that the champagne that she got might not have been as good as the recommendation or whatever. I mean, granted, you know, these are people that are very much accustomed to having the best of everything. So, you know, experiencing firsthand a person whose job it is to tell like wacky one-liners and make observational jabs, for that not to be the best of the best is honestly a jarring experience. Because again, these folks, I've experienced a taste of that. Like working in entertainment for as long as I have, I know what it's kind of like to have that VIP treatment. To not have to worry about, certain parts of your traveling, for instance, where you're going to stay, because that stuff's like already sorted for you, and that's a powerful feeling. You do feel like a level of like special entitlement. And like that, I guess you could call it sort of a almost a spoilt brat mentality kind of overtakes you a little bit. And I now understand where that sort of diva like personality comes from, because if you're treated amazingly as an adult and you don't really have the the lived experience to kind of like see it for what it is and counteract that, that can be like almost psychological warfare on your own ego. Like, it's a strange feeling of knowing what it's briefly like to be on top of everyone else. So that's when you absolutely have to just pause and take a small reality check, because it's usually very short-lived. It's usually illusory, and people in general still need to be treated absolutely with respect. Which is what brings me, honestly, back to the whole idea of, the prince and the princess of Denmark sort of assuming the throne now that Queen Margrethe has abdicated. And good for her, outside of the good people of Denmark, nobody knew who she was. This is a royal family that keeps such a low profile that the Crown Prince was basically able to hang out in the heart of Sydney and nobody, batted an eyelid. it's about as close to being like an undercover boss like situation as you can possibly get. Which, in many regards, I kind of enjoy the show Undercover Boss because the stage makeup that they put like the CEO in, like the fake wig and the funny nose and the glasses of the beard or whatever. And then for them to do like a big reveal and you know elevate somebody who was just struggling to put food on the table, or like a single mother who just trying to put herself through university courses, and then there's like the evil sort of sniping middle manager that or the lazy cashier who decides you don't have to worry about these people, they'll just buy anything from this place. And then they do the big reveal and it's just like, well, it's me. And then they're like going, who are you supposed to be again? Because like a lot of these the people that work at these like franchises or whatever, they usually have no clue who the CEO of these companies actually is, because they just needed a job and the place was hiring. So yeah, so for them to like not know who the CEO is, like I was watching this thing about the old Pimp My Ride series, and they would have to make like multiple takes just to get the right sort of like forced level of natural enthusiasm from the people when their car was finally returned after the better part of half a year with a bunch of like weird paint and furniture and other accoutrement that didn't work after the short demonstration. Like, it's honestly weird sort of catching up with the contestants of these shows like 20 years down the line. A lot of them have aged to varying degrees of whatever. They've long since moved on from that awkward time when television was rapidly losing ground to the internet. Streaming was not really a thing, but like downloading stuff was still very much an unregulated wild, wild west. And yeah, it's the same thing with Undercover Boss, like trying to make sort of, some equally like desperate minimum wage person into like this kind of villain character. And they'd end up being caught by the boss of the company. It's like, it just seems so like out of the blue and unfair and just sort of tasteless. Because like a lot of these like reality shows are they're predicated around like this sort of trust barrier that's enforced by clever editing and producers working behind the scenes. It's like shows like 90 Day Fiance, for instance, like there's no way that the people depicted in that show act that wacky all the time. I mean, granted, there are some people that, you know, live these peculiar lives. Where they can't be, you know, happily single for any longer than it takes to boil an egg. It's a weird old world that we live in, honestly. But it's honestly not that weird. It's really strange. Like, you know, you have this sort of impression of what reality TV shows are actually like, and then they come back like years later, you know, when their non-disclosure agreement contract stipulations run out or whatever, and they just basically go on camera and say, yeah, the whole thing was, you know, completely made up from beginning to end. There's no way that, like, at least 90% of what you ended up seeing was staged or edited in such a way to make it look more realistic than it was. And I think, like, of the reality shows I used to enjoy, my favorite by far is still Kenny versus Spenny. And like that show, you know, that's a nearly 20-year-old show as well. And obviously it also employs, like, you know, the kind of editing and stuff, but there's something like very cool and very real about the series Kenny versus Spenny. Like those two guys are still, like, you know, doing live shows and stuff. And they're like, you know, they're rapidly. I think they're in their either their late 50s or early 60s now, and yeah. Let me check. Let me double check. So, I actually want to draw caricatures of these guys at some point. Kenny Hotz. Let's see. Kenny Hotz. He is 56. So yeah, he's you know, close to 60. And who else? Yeah, that's right. Spencer Rice is actually 60. So yeah, those two. They're essentially at the point in their lives, and they have been for quite some time now, where they're basically unemployable at anything else other than being Kenny versus Spenny. So they'll be doing like live shows basically forever. One of my favorite episodes of theirs is their Christmas special. And they do like this sort of unbelievably awkward but still amazing to watch version of the Christmas Carol. And Spenny plays Ebenezer Scrooge, and Kenny plays like the different ghosts. Like, you know, you got Christmas past, Christmas present, and Christmas future. And honestly, the way things are going with those two, it'll be, yeah, it'll definitely be something close to, Christmas future at the rate they're going. They're amazing, those two. Like, at their age, to still have that level of energy and commitment, it's great. So we're rounding in pretty close to the 3-hour mark. So I'll be right back. Just need to do one final check. So yeah, it took me a little while to get back into the rhythm of live streaming because I'd put it on the shelf for so long. Like, life got in the way more so than I was prepared for, and coming back to it, like, you don't realize just how rusty you actually get until you spend a chunk of time just away from something. A couple of days turns into a couple of weeks, and a couple of weeks turns into, a couple of months very, very quickly. But it's all good now. finish up this hair. And I think I'll call it for tonight at the 3-hour mark. I'm actually pretty happy with how this one's gone. Anyway, guys, once again, thanks to everyone who showed up, lurked, watched, commented, and reacted to what I'm doing. I will be back on Monday-ish, and actually I'll actually be back tomorrow because I want to do some more of this because I'm kind of on a roll here. But yeah, until otherwise specified, I will see you when I see you.